it was not long before I realized that the real power of drones isn't just pretty pictures in the sky. The real power of drones is data collection. You're listening to the Drone Advantage podcast. This is your first class ticket to aerial intelligence. Drones aren't just for cool aerial shots anymore. Now they're changing the way businesses operate. Construction managers are using them to track progress or to do measurements. Farmers are optimizing their crop health with multispectral imaging. We're enhancing safety with complicated inspections of towers and bridges and buildings. Real estate developers are marketing properties with these immersive aerial views. I'm Rob. I'm a commercial airline pilot, FAA-certified drone pilot, and I'm the owner of the Tampa Bay franchise of Blue Nose Aerial Imaging. Welcome to the Drone Advantage podcast, where we break down how aerial intelligence is transforming industries and how you can use drone data to work smarter. In this first episode, I'm going to introduce myself, I'm going to explain what this podcast is all about, and I'm going to give you a preview of what's coming next. Let's get started. Okay, so here's what we're going to cover today. First, I'm going to talk about myself. This is, after all, the introductory podcast. I'm going to talk about why I started this podcast. I'm going to talk about what the Drone Advantage podcast is really all about, the industries that are going to benefit the most from the information that I have to share. And I'm going to give you a sneak peek at some upcoming episodes. By the end of this episode, you're going to know exactly what to expect from this podcast and how drone imaging can make a real impact on your business. Before we get started, just a little bit of housekeeping. As I've already told you guys, I am an airline pilot. And as an international airline pilot, I spend weeks at a time on the road, which means that most often these podcasts are going to be recorded from a hotel room, not from a studio. You guys don't want to see my hotel room? It looks like this, with this picture up here. You guys don't want to stare at that. So I am using a backdrop. So the backdrop that I used in the teaser is this one. It's the one I'm using now. But I want you guys to vote. If you are listening to this podcast on Apple Podcast or Spotify or any other audio-only podcast, I'm going to have to recommend, at least for this podcast, that you hop over to YouTube and you look at the video version of this podcast, because I need you guys to vote on which backdrop you want me to use. I have this one, which is the brick wall that I've been using, that I used on my last podcast, that I'm using on this one for now. But my second option, and the one, I don't know if it's the one that I like better. I like them both. But check this one out. I kind of like it because of, the kind of flowing colors it has. But I also like this brick background. So I don't know which one to use. I want all of you guys to go into YouTube and leave me a comment and tell me which backdrop you like the most. Okay, so we're done with that. Let's get started. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Rob, and I've been in aviation for, almost my entire life. When I say almost my entire life, what I really mean is when I was 9, my dad took me to an air show. And I got my picture taken in the Gunfighter II. And this is where it all started. I'm going to fast forward because I think this is a fun story. I'm going to fast forward to just last year. So that picture was taken in Davenport, Iowa. 5.5 years ago or so, I moved to Florida. I was up visiting some family in Des Moines, and we are sitting and eating breakfast, and it was, 9:30, 10 o'clock in the morning, and I hear something, and I look up, and a B-29 is flying by. And I was like, hey, there's Fifi. And my brother-in-law said, yeah, I think there's an air show or something today. And I'm like, oh, we have to go to the air show. So we all went to the air show. It was the Confederate Air Force. It wasn't even an air show. It was the Confederate Air Force doing a static display, and they were taking people on flights who paid for that. And they had a few airplanes there. They had their B-24 and they had the B-29. They had Fifi there, and they had their P-51 and a couple other airplanes. And their P-51 is the gunfighter too. And I just happened to think, I wonder, is that the same gunfighter too that 38 years ago I sat in the cockpit of? And so I went up and I pulled up a picture, the this picture, I pulled it up on my phone because my cousin happened to send it to me a while ago. And I zoomed in and I looked at the aircraft number, and there it was. It was the same airplane. The crew chief was there putting gas in the airplane. And so I went up to him and I was like, "Hey," and I showed him the picture on my phone and I said, "I cannot I cannot tell you how much it would mean to me to be able to recreate this picture now, like 38 years later." And he basically looked at me and said, "Yeah, that's not happening. Nobody's getting in the airplane." And I'm like, but. And I told him my story, and he's like, "Yeah, they don't really want anybody in the airplane. But the pilot's over there if you want to go ask him." And I was like immediately over talking to the pilot because I really wanted to make this happen. So I'm telling him my story. And this was Sunday. It was, it was the end of their day. They were getting ready to leave. He and his, I think, wife were getting ready to get in the plane and take it to Sioux City, I think, for, their next day's event. And he heard my story and he's like, "Yeah, I can give you a few minutes to hop in there and we'll get a picture." And 38 years later, we took this picture. I just think it's a fun story. So, a little bit more about me. Again, I've been in aviation my entire life. I am a 747 captain for an international airline, and I have a master's in aeronautics with a specialization in aviation human factors. So, really, I have made aviation my entire life. But what does that have to do with drones? Because at the end of the day, you don't have to be an aviation geek or aviation guru to be a drone pilot. As a matter of fact, a lot of drone pilots start off as photographers first because really a drone is just a platform to carry a camera. So, how did I get into drones? I'm not a photographer. At least before I got into drones, I wasn't a photographer. I could not tell you about the exposure triangle or anything that we may talk about in future episodes. I didn't know anything about any of that. I was just an aviation geek. So, how did it all come to drones? Well, I mentioned that 5.5 years ago, I moved down to Florida. And since then, I've been through, I don't know, 4 hurricanes or so. I mean, I haven't personally been through all of them, but my house has. So, and my house is fine, by the way. But since I've moved to Florida, this last hurricane that we had, Hurricane Milton, really tore up a lot of roofs in my area. So I thought, hey, I have this DJI Phantom 4 Pro V2, and why do I have it? I don't know, because I bought a drone. Actually, the reason I bought it is because it has a landing gear frame, and I needed something that could be caught on a boat because I wanted to do some aerial imaging of my boat. So that's actually why I even have that particular drone. I didn't even know what a high-powered drone it was when I bought it because I wasn't into drones yet back then. So anyway, I have this enterprise level drone that's not being used, and I live in a neighborhood like everybody else, and I offered to just do some complimentary roof inspections after the hurricane. I did have my Part 107 remote pilot certificate, but I wasn't getting paid to do any of these jobs. I was just taking pictures of my neighbors' roofs so that they could submit those photos to their insurance company or the contractor for an estimate or however they used the photos. And after I did like 10 houses, I was like, why am I not getting paid to do this? And I decided I'm going to get into aerial photography. And so I did. I got into aerial photography, and it was not long before I realized that the real power of drones isn't just pretty pictures in the sky. The real power of drones is data collection. And I'm a data geek. Again, I'm not necessarily a photographer, I'm a data geek. So I got into the data acquisition side of aerial imaging. And I quickly realized one big problem. And that problem is most businesses don't fully understand how to use drones to their advantage. And that's why I started this podcast. I'm going to break it all down. I'm going to remove the guesswork, and I'm going to show you exactly how aerial intelligence can work for you. So, what is this really about? And who is it really targeted at? Well, if you are a new drone pilot or thinking about getting into the business, this is going to benefit you because I'm going to teach you how to utilize your equipment to provide the best information and the most actionable information for your customers. If you're a construction project manager, I'm going to talk to you about how drones can track progress. There's several different ways drones can track progress. It's not just photographs. Spoiler alert. I'm going to talk to you about how drones can measure things both in 2 dimensions and 3 dimensions. We can measure lengths. We can measure volumetric stockpile volumes. We can do cut and fill reports. I'm going to talk to you about all of that stuff. Digital surface models or digital elevation models. I'm going to cover everything. I'm going to talk to you about how drones can improve your site safety, how you can do safety inspections, or just increasing safety just in the fact that you don't have to have boots on the ground doing some of the things that takes hours or days to do when a drone can be doing it in minutes. If you're in agriculture, I'm going to explain how multispectral imaging can help you improve your crop health, optimize your irrigation, increase your yields. We're going to talk about how to lower your operating expenses while increasing your yields at the same time. And this goes for agronomists in any industry. If you work for a golf course or your golf course superintendent, I'm going to talk about how you can improve your turf health and how we can use maybe some AI to help do that, and how we can do your entire golf course in the time that it takes normally you to inspect one green. If you're in real estate, we're going to talk about how high quality aerial imaging, whether it be photographs and or videos, 3D modeling, can give you an edge in your listings. In each episode, I'm going to break down real world applications. I'm going to break down industry trends, expert highlights. I'm going to share case studies. I'm going to answer the common questions you guys have. I'm going to answer questions you didn't even know to ask. I'm going to give you practical advice on how to integrate aerial intelligence into your business. If you are in infrastructure or inspections, I'm going to show you how aerial imaging is going to increase the safety, decrease your time, increase your efficiency on inspecting all kinds of things, whether it be bridges or power lines or solar farms or cell phone towers. I'm going to show you how we can do inspections very quickly and safely. And this is just the beginning. Drones are transforming emergency response, surveying, environmental monitoring, and so much more. If any of this applies to your business, you're in the right place. Okay, so let's wrap this up. So the Drone Advantage podcast is all about helping businesses understand how to use aerial imaging or aerial intelligence to work smarter. Whether you're in construction, agriculture, real estate, infrastructure, whatever your industry, drones can save you time and money while improving your decision making. Over the next few episodes, we're going to dive into how drone imaging works. We're going to talk about some real-world case studies, and we're going to give you some expert insights on how to leverage aerial data for your industry. Okay, I did promise you that I was going to give you a sneak peek at what was coming next. If you're watching this on March 8th, which is the launch date today of this podcast, so exciting. If you're watching this on March 8th, the next episode, because you have 3 to watch, there's this one and there's 2 others. So the next episode is the business of drone imaging. So we're going to talk about how it works and who needs it. I'm going to talk about some common misconceptions of drone services. I'm going to talk about real world applications, I'm going to talk about how data improves efficiency and saves money. The next episode after that also dropped on March 8th, so you can go watch them all right now. We're going to do a deep dive into construction site monitoring. This is the game changer, okay? This is how drones are streamlining progress tracking and documentation, communication, and making permanent records. We're going to talk about how we're reducing delays, how drone imaging can reduce delays and cost overruns, because this is huge in the construction industry. We're going to talk about the role of drones in safety inspections and compliance. And then we're going to give an overview on the deliverables that are applicable to the construction industry, whether it be 2D orthomosaics mapping or 3D modeling or volumetric analysis. We're going to talk about all of this. So since you can see all three of those episodes now, you're probably interested on what is actually coming next. What's coming that you can't actually see right now? Well, our episode schedule is going to run every other Sunday. I'm going to drop an episode. I'm doing it that way so you guys can listen to it on your podcast app on Monday when you drive to work. So on Sunday, March 23rd, episode 4 is going to drop. And that is going to focus on precision agriculture. We're going to talk about farming with aerial intelligence. We're going to talk about how multispectral imaging improves crop health, irrigation, yield optimization, all the things I've already said. I've already given you that teaser. That's episode 4. That's coming March 23rd. Make sure that if you're on YouTube, please leave me a comment. Vote on those backgrounds that I talked about. Subscribe to the channel. These things really help us out. Click that bell. If you're on your favorite audio podcast app, whether it be Apple Podcast or Spotify or whatever app you're using, please subscribe. Down in the comments, you're going to see links to the podcasts. You're going to see a link to my LinkedIn and my website. If you want any more information, please visit my website. I'm also going to give you a link to the podcast website because it has its own. If you found this interesting, please tag somebody, share it with everybody that you know. And if you have any questions, hop on over to the YouTube channel if that's not where you are, and just drop the questions in the comments. I'm happy to answer any questions you guys have. I'd love to hear from you. Thanks for listening to the Drone Advantage podcast, where we're keeping business decisions at 400 feet or lower. I'll see you in the next episode.